Welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am so excited to have Paul Mullin here as my guest. I want to start by saying thanks so much for watching Foresight TV. I know that Foresight is actually not the place for everybody. Once in a while, we hear that we're too negative or we're never satisfied. But what we're all about is making the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. So if you're here, I assume that you are committed to quality. And I'm so glad you're here today for this great conversation. We'd also love to hear from you about things that are interesting to you that we should be talking about, or maybe you're going to come to me and say, "Hey, I should be a guest because we're doing something really special." So if that's the case, reach out to us. In addition to Foresight TV, we produce all kinds of great thought leadership content. Their LinkedIn post, the Foresight podcast, Tech Tuesday. Perhaps the most impactful is the Foresight website, where we publish new leadership content every day. It's free. It's easy to subscribe to. There's a link in chat, or you can see the QR code up on the screen that you can scan. And so I just hope you take advantage of that tremendous device. I've been hearing from leaders who are using articles we publish there and using it to lead with their team, talk to their team about how to be better. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. And I appreciate your passion for the industry. And with that, let's get started. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Paul, welcome. I do want to just, before we get started on our conversation, wouldn't be right to not at least mention the horrible tragedy that we saw in Washington, D.C. This week with the American Airlines crash. And it's a reminder to me that what we do is about people's lives. And that lives are really precious and really fragile. And so, and that's true for both our residents, for our team members, and for family members.
Absolutely. And I'd also like to recognize and take a moment just to memorialize everything that's happened in Los Angeles with the fires, which is only about 50 miles from me. All our friends and families there, and all the courageous work that the senior housing industry has done to relocate people during those fires, particularly Silverado Senior Living, that did a tremendous job moving people into their Beverly Place community. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's it seems like in the last year we've had so many of these big tragedies that have had a huge impact on senior living, and senior living has done really the operators have done an amazing job of getting residents moved and protecting them and protecting teams. And I don't want to I think we also need to lift up the caregivers, because so many of them had to move with residents, and they just stepped in and did whatever it took to make it happen.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paul, let's start. You've been in the industry forever. You're pretty well known, but just in case somebody doesn't know you or say, "I know I've seen that guy, but what's he do?" Let's talk a little bit about your experience and where you're placed in the industry.
Sure. Approximately 20 years ago, I met Lauren Shook from Silverado Senior Living. Since that day, he has been my mentor and kind of guiding star in purposeful senior housing development. My main role with Silverado when I worked there for about 13, 14 years was all things real estate, development, acquisition, leasing of our hospice offices and at-home offices. So I've carried that on. Lauren and I have remained great friends. He's really like an uncle to me and still is one of my closest mentors. But 5 years ago with Isaac Scott, my business partner, who's currently the CEO of Anthem Memory Care, and you can see a continuation here of memory care, we started Flatiron Development Group. And that group is solely focused on real estate development and technology in the senior living space to improve prosthetic and therapeutic design within senior housing. And I can talk more about what that means. It's a couple of words I've learned from one of my best friends, Doug Pancake and Pancake Architects. But at the end of the day, we consider ourselves Swiss Army knives of senior housing development. Not only are we real estate pros with many, many hundreds of developments that we've underwrote or actually physically developed, we also look at things like labor and productivity. We have deep financial analysis, market analysis that we do, all of which helps people get to understanding this market better. And we work with some very seasoned operators like Silverado and LCS and Cogier have been some of our more recent clients, as well as Anthem. Our main focus in starting Flatiron really was to develop ground up memory care, both for Silverado Senior Living as well as Anthem, my business partner's company. And we currently have a firm commitment from HUD, a construction loan, a HUD 232 loan that's been committed to for ground up development in Rancho Cucamonga, California. So we've started grading the site and feel very fortunate to be leading that effort. So really there to help our clients, which are investors, developers, operators, understand senior housing and how development works and find success in development of more senior housing. Our main mission is to continue to bring life to the people we serve and love through development and really honoring our elders and seniors by building the best in class memory care and senior housing solutions.
So you used a couple of terms. I'm going to want to get to those in just a minute because they're terms I've heard before, but I don't sort of associate them with senior living exactly. So I am dying to get to that. But let's just talk a little more broadly about your view of the senior living industry today. Of course, coming out of COVID, we had profoundly low occupancy rates, and we had profoundly challenging staffing conditions.
Yes.
Both of those have gotten better, and yet we're still, from an occupancy standpoint, looking at the NIC data, we're still significantly under a 90% occupancy level, and that's in spite of not a lot of new development going on, so not a lot of a new inventory. And that's in spite of the fact that there are a lot more of us boomers who are getting older and getting close to needing that. So talk to me just how you see the marketplace for senior living and maybe where the opportunities are and where we ought to be getting better.
Sure. I think things are dynamically changing. I keep saying there's a black swan, and I keep talking to you about it, Steve, to get your input coming for our industry and in a good way. I think technology in particular, which is one of our strong suits, is something that will help productivity and that labor strain that we see. Artificial intelligence, as well as any number of vendors that are out there today that are sponsors of your show, help us really maximize productivity of the staff that we have today. There's any number of companies that do that. So that's one vein that we follow. The other really is just understanding labor and affordability when building communities and where you're building them and how easy it's to get labor in that area. So we do a lot of demographic and labor studies when we're about to build something to let people know not only is there a great market for seniors, there's accessible labor force, or at least there's transit nearby that people can take to get to your community and work there. One of my passions in senior housing is affordability. Worked with you and Bob Kramer and a number of Ryan Frederick, really thinking hard about this. I believe there's going to be a coalition. Lauren Shook has taught me with the managed health providers, folks like Cal Optima in California, Scan Health, these large insurers, we will partner with. They will eventually, I think, according to the folks in Sacramento, take over things like the assisted living waiver program. The folks in Sacramento that run that program for California have even said in the next 3 to 5 years, we expect the managed health providers to take those over. So Bob and I and a few other folks have been setting up meetings and really getting these managed health providers to the table to have that conversation. Folks like Lauren Shook have already proved it out and done it with hospice and palliative care. He's getting paid by them to provide those services today, which is very unique. And things like Curana, organizations and vendors like Curana are on that path as well. So I think that's a big pivot we're going to see. We all need to get to know these people better. I'm not sure why they don't show up to our conferences, but Bob and I would like to change that.
Yeah, as I look at it, I think there's been a certain level of I think it's two parts. I think there's a certain level of arrogance on the part of both the healthcare systems and the insurance companies. Although I had the CEO of Scan on a few months ago, and that was a great conversation. And I think part of the confusion is if I'm a senior living operator, do I contract with the insurance company? Am I talking to the hospital system that's got the contract with the insurance company? And I think a bigger part of it is that senior living is actually very intimidated by the hospital and healthcare system. We don't know how to talk to them. We don't understand how they think. And that makes the communications really, really tough. And so it sounds like you're making good progress in that area, though.
Yeah. And, it really all goes back to some simple things. Once again, I don't mean to keep, bringing up Loren Shook, but he really has changed my life in the way I think about it. Yep. He's collected outcome data as long as Silverado has been around, 25, 26 years. From day one, he has data upon data on every resident that he's ever served. If we all do that, we can communicate with these managed health providers and let them know what kind of quality of life our residents have, the outcomes that we can provide. That's meaningful to actuaries and adjusters that work there. So get that data. And now that we've all unleashed things like artificial intelligence, we particularly work with a company called SkyPoint Cloud, Tiss and Matthew, who started a company and was the CTO of a company called Alignment Health over 10 years ago, thinking about this, serving a population here in Southern California and North Carolina with this kind of outcome data. So that really, there's simple things we can do as operators and providers to buddy up with these managed health providers and speak their language.
Yeah. Well, Josh Luke, a good friend of mine, been a hospital administrator. And one of the things he has talked about for years is, and he's pleaded with senior living operators who complain about not being able to get hospitals to pay attention to him. He said, it's very simple. You just put together your data, exactly what you're talking to. You just put together your readmission data, your length of stay data. You create a one pager, and even if nobody will talk to you, you just go in there and you get it on front. You get it on the desk of the CEOs. You get it on the desk of the CFOs in the hospital. You get it on the desk of the discharge planners. And after you do that for a few minutes, one of these days you're going to walk in there and somebody's going to say, "Wait a minute, I got to talk to these guys." And it's a fear. It's hard because nobody likes coming up to doors that are shut, right?
Yep, exactly. No, Dr. Josh Luke is one of my good friends and clients, and we're activating a community right now in his health district to do just that. He really is a visionary, and those are the people we associate with and develop with.
You bet. So let's, you and I have been sort of talking, where do we go next? Do we want to talk about the project that I've been talking about forever, or we go to AI? Let's talk about that. And then I want to talk a little bit more about technology and AI.
Yeah, and I'd like to give you a lot more credit, Steve. You did reconnect me, and me and Josh have been friends for years. Yep. But thanks to you, you really helped reconnect us at Interface last year. And so now we're both running in the same direction with 150 bed development up in his health district, which is going to be very exciting. And with that, what we vision as part of this, not only is an AL waiver kind of sanctuary and affordable community in a part of California that needs affordable senior housing, the Bakersfield metro area and Delano, we are really focusing in on longevity. And where I called you almost 2 or 3 years ago, Steve, was about you are an Adventist. We're working with an Adventist nonprofit. One of the blue zones in California is the Adventist Church here in Southern California and the community of Adventists. So I've been telling you, and I still need your help. I still want you to help me consult on this project. It's coming back together. COVID didn't help, obviously, with that. but to build a blue zone or a longevity center, not only just senior housing programming, assisted living, memory care, independent living with casitas, which everybody does and is very successful, but overlaying a real program like the Power 9 that you find with the Blue Zone. And that includes things like moving naturally, your purpose or your ikigai, as the Japanese call it. That's key. You have to have purpose. Your community and purpose. You have those things, you're going to live longer. It's kind of simple. And there's 7 or 8 other things. Eating well, obviously, plant-based food. A lot of what you practice as an Adventist, Steve, is really the basics of living longer. It's not rocket science. We all know these things. It's part of your religion and it's part of other religions. It's part of the Japanese culture, really. And if we follow this kind of guideline for life, we'll do well. One of the Power 9 is having wine at 9 or 5 as well.
Yeah.
Have a glass of wine, and you're supposed to feel better or whatnot. There's some other cool, things, but community and purpose, to me, I've always learned from you and other people, are the 2 most powerful things for our programming that help longevity. So we're working on several of those projects. One is with an Adventist nonprofit that we need your help with, Steve.
Yeah. Well, I've got this good friend, Russell Rush, who I think you've met, who is the best senior living salesperson in the country. He takes these terribly difficult problem child buildings. He's created a system. He gets them built up faster. He just crushes the competition. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that he does, probably the single most effective things he does, is when he sits down with a prospect, he makes them sit through a 45-minute presentation on the dangers of loneliness. And I look at it, I think, well, it kind of scares them, but as they see it, they just basically, it's like it opens their eyes, because it's probably the single actually biggest benefit of senior living, right?
Yes.
You can get the care stuff at home, but you can't solve the loneliness problem in your house.
Yep. And sitting at a couch isn't going to solve that, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So it's really, really important. It is really, really critical. And I'm really excited about that. I guess here's the question that I have, though. I'm going to be a little a provocateur here.
Sure.
I wonder if when I get to be 90 or 91, am I just going to go, you know what? I'm going to eat whatever I want. I mean, I'm old. I'm going to die soon anyway. I don't really care about this wellness stuff. What do you think?
No, absolutely. But amazingly enough, all of a sudden comes along something called Ozempic, and that drug. And there's actually natural prohibitors of that same gene. And we're going to find out very soon, you don't need Ozempic. There's some natural things you can eat and do that mimic Ozempic. But my point is, that's going to, I think, solve a big problem of diabetes within our population, particularly in seniors. I agree with you. People aren't giving up butter and sugar at 90, but we now have drugs and other methodologies and even natural foods that will allow us to manage the diabetic condition. And quite honestly, that was one of my biggest concerns. And several senior housing developers I know started to build communities around not only longevity, but how to beat diabetes with diet. So they're now finding with Ozempic that it's going to really change the way we all treat diabetes, which I think is great.
Yeah. And I would say, in fairness, if there are small tweaks that can make a big difference in lifestyle, right? And so I think focusing on those has so many benefits. So let's talk a little bit about technology, though.
Sure.
As you know, this week has been, in the world of AI, incredibly traumatic, shall we say that? DeepSeek came out and said, we can do almost everything that OpenAI can do, and instead of costing hundreds of millions of dollars, we did it with cheaper chips for $6 million.
Yep.
And the NVIDIA stock price went crashing down about 15%. wiped out what billions, trillions of dollars in the market in a single day. Some of that's come back, and there's still a lot of skepticism about AI. So just talk to me about how you're looking at all this.
Sure. I think AI is such a kind of misused name in the technology business. Not a lot of people understand it. There's some really simple use cases you and I can talk about. We've talked about before. I'll bring up a couple of them. But in regard to DeepSeek, type in Tiananmen Square, see what you find out. It's an open source, but very restrictive on some information. Type Tiananmen Square into OpenAI, I think we get a real answer. So my point isn't political. My point is that probably it's a state-owned entity, and you need to be very careful about the data you're putting in. And sure, once somebody spent $600 million to create code, it's not too hard to copy them with just $6 million. And that's a statement from Sam Altman, just I think today or yesterday. So I think it is a Sputnik launch for AI. I think it changes the way we think about it. But talking to somebody who's a genius that's been in this before there was the word AI, this and Matthew at SkyPoint Cloud says, really doesn't affect me at the application layer. It does affect networking equipment and the cost of all of that and cloud computing. That should go down because of it, which I think he thinks, and I think is an overall good thing for the market. Should be less expensive to, use that platform, and it's less equipment or network intensive. But what I've been told by folks like JT at August Health and Tisson is that, hey, it really doesn't move the needle on the application layer, which is really where the use case is. And I think just as an example, when I say use case, one of the mind-boggling things that one of my friends just shared with me from Point Click Care, a really brilliant woman named Mary, she's using it. Point Click Care is using it to look up every day. They've set up a model, and this is pretty easy to do, where they go to California Department of Social Services, they go to the Texas Department of Health, they go to Oregon Department of Health, and see how the regs are changing day by day. It scans the regs every day with everything that's going on back at CMS, and there's a lot of change happening there, obviously. They found a way to really kind of augment, using AI, a way to check these mountains of regulations to see what's really changing for Point Click Care. And you don't need to be a multi-billion-dollar company to do that. You need all the websites, which you load into AI, and you start monitoring regulation. To me, that's like rocket science, and it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, I see a number of companies who are doing that, who are also, I had Hillary with Charter Senior Living on earlier this week on Tech Tuesday.
Yeah.
And one of the things they've done is loaded all their policies and procedures into AI and created a mascot so that if I'm an employee and I say, what's our policy on vacations? What's our policy on COVID? Whatever it is. And what they're finding is that what happens is somebody says, oh, I got to figure this. I can't remember what the policy is. And they do one of two things. They either wing it because they don't want to look stupid by calling their managers, or they do call the managers and then they've got to wait for hours to hear back from to somebody. And instead they can just go in and type it into this avatar, and they've got that information instantly. So
precisely. And, folks like Lewis, who's the COO of Anthem, have told me, hey, we loaded all these policies and we realized there were some things we needed to correct, and there was some overlap and cleanup. It really just kind of helps productivity and more efficiency. For Flatiron, we've done over 300 development underwriting assignments in the past 5 years on all things from active adult through skilled nursing and behavioral health. We load every one of those underwriting pro formas for construction, for labor, for operations into AI to create a library database for our clients. And now we have the power to just type in, hey, we're building here with this client with this type of program. What should it cost? What is labor cost in that market? Some really simple things that you can get with the trove of data you already have. What Tisson keeps saying at SkyPoint is build this data lake house to put everything in on your data lake, on all the information that you have behind you, which is Yardi, Point Click Care, you name it, all these different disparate networks and databases, put it all into a lake and build a lake house that can sort through all this information and get to really the holy grail, which is a real dashboard on how your company's doing. And it doesn't need to be incredibly complicated. And I think you're really helping shine a light on that, Steve, with your conference when that happens. Count me in. I think that's a genius idea.
Yeah, I think that AI has the ability to take away so much drudge work, stuff that people just don't do. There's a company, Springs Living is using it.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds like a really simple thing, right? But they use it to do they do a movie every day. Yep. And it takes their activity directors doing it manually hours every month to do it, right? You've got to look at what movies you have available, what you've already shown, what residents want, what the maturity ratings are, what Rotten Tomatoes or one of the other rating sites says about them, and you don't want to repeat. And so they've actually created a little routine that in like 30 seconds they get a movie calendar and somebody still's got to review it. But I mean, it takes another company. My friend Mo has 3 6-bed buildings. She uses AI to do her whole admission process from hours and hours per resident down to about 20 minutes. And discharges all her paperwork. Incredible what it does.
Yeah. And the last thing I would say about it, and we can keep talking about it, is we've all been using AI with Google and these different browsers for years.
That's right.
It's not new. It's just really getting your head around some simple use cases that make you more productive. And I think the more you use it, the more it augments and changes to your database and your writing style to help you become more productive. And certainly happened for me and our team. So
yeah, and it's not perfect, right? No. It can be really frustrating. I'm doing some data extraction exercises with it, right? And one of the things I'm asking it to do is find web addresses for me, and it'll give me this whole thing and no addresses, and I've got to go back and say, "You stupid machine, give me the addresses." And then it goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you wanted that," which of course it did, and then it comes back and gives it to me. And so, of course, once in a while it does. It gives out just garbage answers, right?
Right. It's moving from a child's intelligence to a teenager, and soon maybe a grown-up. We'll see. But it's just a powerful tool. I think everybody should use. I think the biggest impactful thing will be sales and marketing initially, because it can really move the needle on the way we're all going about attracting residents. When you load all your admissions data into something like OpenAI, that's a powerful tool. Once again, data is really the key. And you hit it on the head, Steve. It sounds really simple, everything you and I are talking about. The hardest part is getting all that data on board and finding the right partners. I'll say again, Skype Cloud does that. You go to them, they'll help you find and extract this data and build this data lakehouse. I've seen it. Generations has been using it for a while now. I think they're doing a great job with the way they're working with it to create a data lakehouse for things, once again, like Yardi and EHR systems and other things. So find the right partners. Don't try and go out there on your own. The stuff doesn't cost a fortune. You like anything else, hire an expert to help you get there. And that's something Flatiron, really takes pride in helping people get down that road.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that it feels so overwhelming, and there's so many places that you can go with AI, right? So for any individual organization, you've got to look at it and say, what are the things that would give us the biggest bang for the buck? And when I say buck, either time and energy or dollars, that'll make our organization better for people, right?
Yep.
And it should never be seen as a replacement for people. But so I'm going to shift gears here. I'm going to ask one question, because in the last few days, I've been talking to several people. I actually talked to my team about it this morning when we did our team meeting. And so I've been thinking about it. I turn 70 next week, so it's becoming more real for me. And but here's my question for you. what are you going to do where are you going to go live when you get into your 80s and 90s?
Great question. I'm going to be with a community of people that I surround myself with, primarily my family, obviously, but also friends that have the same purpose, have the same lifestyle, really kind of an affinity type. I dream of Chris Hollister, and I dreamed of a country music affinity cowboy retirement community outside of Dallas. That might not be just for me, but Chris really liked the idea, and having a stage and having casitas similar to a place like Margaritaville and Daytona Beach. That's where I see myself. Maybe not that particular affinity group, though I do like margaritas. But something where you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. But I think this Adventist project you and I are thinking about with the nonprofit is a great example of where people would aspire to be because they want to live longer, and that's where I would want to be. Somewhere that promotes health, exercise. There'd have to be surfing and kayaking for me, and golf. But where there's activities and things and community. You hit it on the head earlier with depression. Surround yourself with new friends and people. It really is your third act or your third life. The last thing I would say is I want to also, when I'm that age and even now, encourage younger people to help us move the needle and join this industry. The Vision Center is a nonprofit that I'm a advisor with. Doug Olson, as you know, is really working hard to get more college students into our industry. And that's something I feel very strongly about, and I'll continue to work on until I'm well into my 90s or 100s, hopefully.
Well, and I think that that's one of the areas that we don't do a great job of, is how do we create a multi-generational experience. Honestly, my biggest reservation about senior living is that I don't want to necessarily be with a bunch of people who are as old or older than I am. I'd like to be, this, not that I would like to have more variety than that. So, and I do, and we are seeing some, sort of going back to these affinity groups. We're seeing, there are a number of Jewish homes that cater to that particular lifestyle belief system. We've got the Zen Center up in Nielsburg that has done fabulously well. My friend Mary Ann Donaghy, who was the CMO at Nick for a while, she's actually moved into one of the Margaritavilles.
Nice.
Yesterday, she loves it. I mean, she's got new friends and lots of things going on. And so
Mirabella with ASU, my buddy heads up development for ASU. He told me of the 80% of the people that moved in, there's hundreds of people who live there. None of them were alumni or any participant with ASU, but now they're all registered for classes at ASU. It's been a boon, and they're giving money to the university. So you hit it on the head. I think multi-generational and education, lifelong learning is key.
Yeah, and Jada, who's producing for us, she's an ASU graduate, and visited that community a year and a half ago, and it's a great place. Paul, we are out of time. Great conversation. Thank you all for joining us, and we will be back next week with another couple great shows.